Amy Bray with us today, and her dad. So you're going to talk about how can we find another way for Ullswater, solving the global climate crisis and nature crisis starting here at home. She's a very special person, is Amy. I've been privileged to know her for a while. Hugely charismatic, inspirational. And I looked at her website before coming tonight and saw there's a section of the website that says achievements. There are 35 bullet points. She's 50 years younger than I am, and probably I've had difficulty mustering 5 or 6 so-called achievements. I will run through some of them. It would take too long just to list them all. But she kicked off her activist days organising a 0-hour march in London in August 2018. Gave talks to marine biologists. I have an issue. No, I don't. And January 2019, she established Another Way. And a special shop, Another Way, spelled in a different way, in Penrith, which ultimately she expanded to other shops, Way as in W-E-I-G-H, weighing things, to encourage people to leave packaging behind and come bring their own stuff. It's sort of her personal mission to improve the well-being of us all. And that was very much in her philosophy. Then gradually, over the years, she became recognized as a UN Youth Envoy in August 2019. She was appointed in October 2019 a patron of the Friends of the Lake District. December 2019, Cumbria Woman of the Year. I mean, how does one become a Woman of the Year? I mean, it's an incredible thing to have in your CV, isn't it, really? March 2020, appointed Ambassador for DEFRA, so the Ministry of Agriculture and so on, International Year of Plant Health. In between months, planted 6,000 trees. October 2021, received the Prime Minister's Point of Light Award. And in January 2022, nominated Cumbria Wildlife Trust First Nature Hero. January 2020, appointed UK National Committee for the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. December 2022, appointed Trustee of Cumbria Wildlife Trust. It goes on. 10,000 daffodils. Developed a pioneering climate activation and anxiety workshop in September last year. Planted over 30,000 trees in Cumbria, and December 2023 gave Richie Sunak a lesson on how to plant trees. I mean, it doesn't come, that's it. Crikey. Anyway, she has not given up in her personal mission to change the world and make it a better place for all of us. It's a hugely inspirational path she's chosen. And I, for one, am a huge supporter of everything she's done. And we're in this room, we have people who've given a lot of their time and energy to support her in this way. This talk is really about embracing those ideas, and particularly trying to encourage more young people to follow this shining light, which is a beacon of light that she's following to try to make people just change the way to do things. And Friends of the Ullswater, where our mission is about improving people's education and awareness of the landscape and the people and the communities, so it's completely in line with her vision. So we are looking forward very much tonight to see how she can add her particular flavour and a magic touch to stardust to this particular mission, and how Ullswater itself and our communities in Ullswater can profit from her energy and passion and inspiration. So that's enough from me. Welcome, Amy.
you, Tim. I didn't realize you're going to be reading out my CV.
Only about a 10.
So I don't really need the next slide, but that's me. I graduated from uni last year, so I'm now living back in Ullswater full time, working on Another Way, which I founded 5 years ago now. And some things that I like, some sea slugs. Has anyone seen a sea slug before? Yes. Yeah, a few of you. That's not what I usually get as well. But I did my dissertation on sea slugs. They're very cool. I like cold swimming in Ullswater and vegan food. And I dislike frozen broccoli, fast fashion, and climate breakdown. So first of all, to embarrass myself a bit with some baby photos, but for me, this is where it all started. So I, from a very young age, loved exploring the outdoors, and I was very lucky that my parents took me to places all around the world to experience nature and adventure. So I started rock climbing at the age of 5, me crawling out of a hole in the Peak District, and exploring glaciers in Chile as well, and of course climbing the mountains and swimming in the lakes of the Lake District. And so I developed a very strong connection with nature and with the Lake District from a very young age. And that gave me a huge love and passion to protect it. When I was 12, my best friend gave me this book, The Ocean of Life by Professor Callum Roberts. And it's all about the threats that our ocean faces. So everything from overfishing to plastic pollution. And as a 7-year-old, I had always wanted to be a marine biologist and study our ocean. Sea slugs, dolphins, you name it. And so this book made me really terrified that the ocean that I loved and wanted to study in the future would no longer exist when I was able to do so. And that book catalyzed in me action. I needed to do something myself to fight for our future and to protect the beautiful marine life that I was so fascinated by. And to start with, I channeled that anger and despair into campaigning and protesting. So this is me at the very first Youth Climate March that I organised in the UK. This is 0 Hour. And about 40 of us attended this march, walking to Westminster, and I gave a speech outside Parliament. But I couldn't really understand why only 40 people were standing up for our future when the IPCC report had just come out that had declared we had just 10 years left to act before climate breakdown. So aside from marching, I was phoning our MP, I was phoning supermarkets, asking them to stop selling unsustainable tuna and plastic packaged products. And I did some weird and wacky things like taking SpongeBob to the top of Helvellyn to campaign against BP drilling in the Amazon reef. But all of these things, while they were getting my voice heard, it didn't feel like I was making a significant difference on the world around me. And I felt quite disempowered. And actually, I looked at my own life and realized that while I was asking other people to make changes to tax plastic bags and to ban microplastics, I was still using a huge amount of plastic in my own life. And I was still eating meat and flying abroad on holiday. So I decided to start with my life and analyze everything that I was doing. And to start with, in 2015, I challenged my family to go plastic free. And this was a really difficult journey because you walk down a supermarket aisle and everything is wrapped in plastic. It took lots of time and effort to try and find how to get all of our food without plastic packaging. And even things like in the bathroom, your toiletries, your shampoo and toothpaste, all of these things traditionally came in plastic bottles or plastic tubes. So it took some exploring, but it was actually really fun. And it got us thinking that actually if we make changes ourselves, it can empower us and it can help us to have a sense of agency in the face of a global and complex crisis. So I started posting on social media, helping other people to do the same, just posting easy steps that I was doing to help other people follow. So I set up this account called Devotion to Ocean, and I was posting all the swaps that I was doing every week. And then I kind of thought, well, what's the next step I can take to inspire more people to take action? And that was school. So I started meeting with the management team at school, and we made the school single-use plastic free. I had this plastic-free shop at break and lunch to try and help people find reusable products instead of single-use ones. And I was giving assemblies, but I didn't feel that the school was really listening to me, and none of my peers really cared at all. So I decided to take it outside my own school and see what other local schools thought about it. So I developed this whole awareness session where kids could make a life-size albatross out of newspapers and plastic-free glue that they made. They got all of the plastic they had used in a week. They brought it in and we piled it up in the center of the classroom and just saw how much waste we personally create. And that had a really profound impact on these young people who just have this innate desire to try and do something to help nature. And that became so popular that I was visiting schools across Cumbria 3 days a week throughout my own A-levels and missing quite a lot of school myself. But this was an incredible experience for me because I was the first young person to educate other young people on what was happening to our environment and what we could do as individual young people about it. My message was one of hope, and that really resonated with people and inspired a lot of people to make pledges for our planet. So in January 2019, I decided to register my charity with the Charity Commission, and Another Way was born. At the time, we were setting up the Another Way Zero Waste shops in Penrith with Zoe Hedges, and we had a fun play on words to create the name Another Way for the charity too. And our mission is very simple. It's to empower and inspire people to make decisions with compassion towards our planet. We do that through a whole array of things: awareness sessions, talks, resources, leaflets, talks with scientists. And we present people with 3 questions. Firstly, why? Why do we need to change? Secondly, what if? What if we got it right? What if we did find another way? How good could that look? And then thirdly, how? How can we change? What does it take from each one of us, from businesses, communities, governments, at every level? So firstly, why? Why do we need to change? Well, this is a graph that shows our global energy use. So from the 1800s, you can see it was steadily plateauing. We didn't use much energy at all globally. And then after the Industrial Revolution, it exploded, and it's been growing exponentially ever since, currently at a rate of 2.5% increase every single year. That is obviously unsustainable on a planet with finite resources. But for me, this is also a graph of hope, because it shows that all of this energy comes down to our choices: how we eat, how we travel, how we heat our homes, how we live. So we have the power to turn this graph around. This is a graph of global greenhouse gas emissions per sector. So energy is the vast proportion of greenhouse gas emissions that cause climate change. And that energy can be broken down into industry, so heating, industrial buildings, industrial processes. Energy use in buildings is massive, that's how we heat our homes. And then transport as well is obviously a large proportion of those emissions. So mainly road transport, vehicles and cars, and aviation as well. And then the second largest contributor to climate change is agriculture and land use. So that's cutting down forests, it's degrading peat bogs, it's cutting down mangroves and coral reefs, and it's animal agriculture as well. So farming livestock, producing methane emissions. And then we have waste and industry as well as contributing to those greenhouse gas emissions that humanity is emitting. And what's the picture looking like? Well, 2023 was not a good year for climate. I'm sure, as many of you know, we exceeded 1.5 degrees of warming last year for the first time. That's pretty scary because scientists thought we wouldn't reach that for at least another 10 years. So warming is accelerating, and greenhouse gas emissions are still accelerating too. And you can see that top red line, that was 2023. The temperatures are way higher than any of the averages of other years. So this is scary stuff, and that kind of suggests we're starting to reach tipping points where planetary systems are becoming unstable, things like oceans not being able to absorb more heat, or ice caps melting so they can't reflect as much heat back into the atmosphere. Our oceans absorb 90% of the carbon dioxide we release, and they are growing so hot. An average of 2 degrees increase in global ocean temperatures last year. That's going to have profound effects not only on marine life, but on our climate, because our oceans control the climate of our planet. And in the face of all those bad news stories, nothing seems to be happening politically. In fact, we are taking U-turns on climate policies. Feels particularly relevant with Scotland's U-turn last week. All of these bad headlines, and it can make us really overwhelmed. And sometimes when we hear all of this bad news, it can make us burn out and think we cannot do anything to solve this crisis. So I think it is so important to celebrate some of the wins and the good news too. What are those? So last year we were on course to triple renewable energy production globally, which was well ahead of the target. That was great. In the UK last year, we had the lowest meat consumption in 20 years. And Denmark and other European countries have actually banned animal agriculture adverts entirely. Portugal ran on wind-generated energy for 6 consecutive days last year, which set a really great precedent for other countries. And the EU phased out fossil fuel boilers, which will be phased out by 2040. The emissions of Germany were the lowest that they've been in 70 years as they move away from coal. And the Biden administration in the US banned old growth forest logging, so that was a good win. And that was the first sustainable aviation fuel transatlantic flight. So we're moving at some progress, but there's still such a long way to go. And climate change is very much here. It's very much here right now. A lot of people think of climate change as an issue of somewhere else and are far into the future. But of course, we're seeing the effects of climate change already in the Lake District with increased flooding, with crazy weather patterns. And there will be increased food insecurity as well. And of course, global migration as people flee the climate crisis. So here are just some pictures that represent some of the effects and consequences of climate change. Does anyone know the one in the top left, the baby turtle? Does anyone know the impact of climate change on turtles?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Change sex.
Yeah.
Determines the sex of the eggs.
Exactly, yeah. So turtles and other reptiles lay their eggs in the sand and they have temperature determined sex. So the heat switches on the male gene, the female gene. So the hotter the sand is, the more female turtles are born. And so the whole population is now skewed towards females, which means that obviously that population is now unsustainable. So what about the one of all the insects? Next to the turtles, there are a few insects there. Insects are being affected by climate change because of something called phenological mismatch. So because our summers are getting earlier, then a lot of insects are coming out earlier, and they are skewing their the time that they come out with the migrating birds that come to the UK to feed. So when birds lay their eggs and have their chicks, they actually can't feed them because they are mismatched with the timing that their favorite food is out. And insects are actually suffering most out of all species because of climate change. So we've seen a 75% decrease in insect populations since 1970. I mean, you used to drive along the motorway and your car bonnet had insects all over it, and that just doesn't happen anymore. And of course, without insects, we won't have a secure food source as a human population. So pretty scary. Then next to that, does anyone know what that picture is? Diatoms. Yeah, so that's phytoplankton. So they are tiny marine organisms, little bits of algae, just unicellular organisms that make up the base of our whole marine food web. And most species of phytoplankton build this skeleton around them that's made of calcium carbonate, or what you or I know as chalk. And chalk is soluble in acidic liquids. So if you've ever kind of dropped a mint or something in a can of Coke and you've seen it fizzle and bubble away, that is basically what's happening in our oceans. As they absorb carbon dioxide, they're becoming more and more acidic, which means that phytoplankton can't build these skeletons, or they're dissolving. The same is happening to coral reefs, and that's going to cause absolutely disastrous consequences for marine food webs. Not to mention humans, because every other breath you take is produced by phytoplankton. So why do none of us even know what phytoplankton are? And then up in the top right corner, that's a young person feeling perhaps worried, perhaps confused, anxious, scared, angry. So the mental health consequences of climate change are huge, with 72% of young people in the UK facing eco-anxiety or are worried for their future. This is a very real and rational response to an emergency that has already caused 3 million deaths globally and will likely cause many more. And then, of course, the human effects of climate change don't stop on mental health problems. It also are causing physical health problems, with air pollution and increased heat causing especially vulnerable people like asthma sufferers or people with chronic illness to suffer even more and to have a higher risk of fatality. Then, of course, we have the wildfires that have been ravaging the world in the last few years, from Siberia to Australia and America, and even here in the UK, creating huge species deaths as well as more carbon emissions. Of course, melting ice is also a huge issue. We had the lowest ice cover ever in the Arctic last year, and I did some modelling at uni, which was very scary, that said we'd have our first ice-free Arctic by 2070. So I will be just 68 years old then. And drought. Drought is already causing famine in large areas of Africa. So this is an inequality issue too. We are causing, through our actions, people around the world to go hungry. We are in a polycrisis. This is not just the climate crisis, it's a nature crisis. In fact, climate change is only the third biggest issue facing our planet. The first is habitat use and degradation. So we need to think of this as a complex, joined up issue that will take complex solutions. It's about equality, it's about food insecurity, it's about gender equality, it's about all of these things. And it ultimately comes down to some people taking more than others. And this is a theory called the tragedy of the commons. So in Cumbria, we used to have common land, and people could graze their livestock on it. And this theory says that some people would inevitably graze more than others at the expense of other people. So if some people put more than their allowance of sheep on, then other people will have less land to graze themselves. And this is essentially what has happened with the climate crisis. Some people consume more and more than the earth can take. Like in the UK, we are currently consuming 4.5 Earths per year. So if everyone in the world did that, we would have been extinct long before now. Whereas other people are consuming much less than their fair share. And this leads to disproportionate responsibility on the people who can afford to do something about this and to change this. The top 10% of wealthiest people in the world consume half of total lifestyle-based emissions. And that's everyone over a salary of £32,000 a year. So probably a lot of people in Cumbria fit into that bracket. And that means that it's up to us to try and do something, do everything we can to try and change it for the people in the world who are suffering the most. And the top 1% of earners, so everyone above 130,000 a year, are responsible for the same emissions as the bottom 2/3 of humanity. That's 5 billion people. And their emissions, the top 1% of humanity's emissions, have caused 1.3 million excess heat-related deaths due to climate change. So there's a huge disproportionate responsibility. This is an equality issue. And how can we solve that? Well, it's by making this choice. It's by making a choice of global compassion. Every time we make a decision where to spend our money, how to travel, how to eat, how to vote, is it best for you or is it best for everyone? Everyone being people and nature too. Has anyone read this book, The Snail and the Whale? Yeah, it was one of my childhood favorites by Julia Donaldson. And in this book, the whale travels the sea with a snail on its back. And one day the snail gets beached and the whale gets beached. The snail tries to find help. So it runs off the beach and it finds the nearest village. And it tries to alert people and alarm people to this poor whale suffering on the sand. But none of the adults listen. They just carry on their busy lives. They ignore the snail. But then the snail goes into the local primary school and it writes on the blackboard, "Save the whale." And at once, all the children are up out of their seats. They're running to the beach. And together, they rally an effort that saves the whale and pushes it back into the water. So why am I talking about this story? Well, it's that innate compassion that children have to just help their fellow being, no matter if it looks different from them, that we need to rekindle as adults, trying to make decisions based on compassion towards our neighbours and those we share our planet with. It's moving away from this mindset of ego, that humans are at the top of all species. We control ecosystems because we don't, and ultimately we are at the mercy of our planetary systems. So moving away from that mindset to a mindset in which we're just part of the whole ecosystem, in which we need nature to support us and nature needs us to support it. And surely that would be a better and happier way of living too. Unfortunately, we've spent a lot of the past decades arguing about who is responsible for climate change and who should fix it. Now, I argue that that is not a helpful debate to be having when every single one of us needs to change and is responsible. Instead of asking, well, is it corporates? Is it governments? Is it individuals? And of course, fossil fuel companies have been putting millions into blaming individuals for many years now. So how do we get around this debate? Well, people are actually responsible for 2/3 of greenhouse gas emissions. That can be directly related to households and to our personal behaviour and lifestyles. And the Climate Change Committee in the UK has said that we have to engage people and to have social behavioural change in order to meet our net zero targets, else we just won't get there. That's significant behaviour changes that we will all have to make in order to move away from this crisis. And it's important to remember that we are not just consumers, but active members of society who have the power to influence both our community, our local area, our county, our country, and the whole world. But the link between knowledge of climate change and what we can actually do about it is very weak. I really love this diagram to illustrate that we actually need change on all levels of society in order to fix the climate crisis. So upstream on the river, we have everything that influences a systemic level, so at the governmental level. And there's a lot that we can do as individuals to influence that level. Things like voting, protesting, making sure that politicians listen to our agendas, emailing your MP. And governments have a lot of responsibility to fix this crisis, taking global leadership on climate policies, making sure that infrastructure is made to transition away from fossil fuels and towards renewables, and making it easier for us as individuals to make the right decision, making it easier for us to buy an electric car, making it cheaper for us to buy organic loose produce instead of factory farm meat, and making sure that homes are insulated and warm and energy is cheaper for everyone. Then in the midstream of this river here, we have corporates and communities as well. So there's a huge amount that businesses should be doing to move us away from the climate crisis and to focus on people and planet, over profit. There's a lot that we can do as consumers to influence the midstream of this river, whether it's making sure that we spend money on companies who we buy into, their values, making sure that we boycott those companies who are having destructive practices. And that's already worked. We've seen in the past, people boycotted lots of plastic packaging in supermarkets, and several supermarkets moved away from plastic bags and instead introduced loose fruit and vegetables. We need to put that pressure back on supermarkets so they continue to do that, but it can work. And then downstream, we have everything that we do in our lives. So everything that we eat, the way we get around, the way we invest our money, which can also influence midstream and upstream. And that's a massive thing that all of us can do. And having a conversation as well, talking to your neighbour, your colleague, your friend, your family member about the climate crisis and about what you're doing, as an example. There are lots of theories about how we can transition away from the climate crisis into a sustainable world. And my favourite is the 3 Horizons framework, which was developed at the International Futures Forum. It took 10 years to make this graph, so we better enjoy it. But this recognises the poly-crisis that our world is facing. And the framework proposes 3 societal pathways. It encapsulates how disruptive innovation can be used to move away from business as usual and create a regenerative system. So Horizon 1, this red curve that goes down, is business as usual. That's a destructive system and it's typified by decline. It never recovers. It can't adapt to change. People are suffering. The planet is suffering. Resources are being used up. Horizon 2 is a world in transition. So companies are disrupting. They're making new innovations that have the potential to be harnessed either for good or for bad. People are shouting about it. People are having their voice heard. People are trying to do the right thing, but perhaps the infrastructure is not quite there to support them yet. So Horizon 2 ends up just plateauing out. Whereas Horizon 3 encapsulates a regenerative society. This prioritizes social and environmental well-being. It's able to dynamically recover from change because systems aren't embedded in a linear economy. It could also be known as a paradigm shift. That's a profound departure away from business as usual to creating a new transformative system. So any innovation, any behavior can be either harnessed by this destructive system or a transformative and viable system. And each one of the decisions we can make can fit into one of these categories. So for example, if you go to the supermarket and buy a pot of vegan yogurt that's in plastic and then recycle that plastic, that's kind of going halfway. You've made one good decision, but you're also creating packaging that's ending up in a linear economy. So it will one day be in landfill. So that's probably in Horizon 2. Whereas maybe if you created your own oat farm on your little smallholding and you made all of your oats from scratch and you had no packaging at all, or you got a milk delivery in glass bottles and you return the glass bottles and they recycled them, then that would be Horizon 3. So does anyone know what this is from? Chicken Run.
Yeah.
My friends at uni made me watch this and I was very glad they did because I learned something from it, and it's this. So Ginger the chicken is part of this chicken coop who are being terrorized by their farmer, and they're one by one being made into chicken pie. And they're all obviously very terrified that soon they will meet their end, and they are trying to hatch a plan to escape this farm. So instead of being motivated by fear of death and of what is going to happen to them, Ginger the chicken every night goes and sits on the roof of the hen coop, and she looks over to the fields and the green hills far away, and she imagines how good life will be like if she is free and escapes and can live in these beautiful green fields. Why am I talking about this and why is it relevant? Well, if we are only motivated by fear, by anger, by despair, we are never going to create the world that we could. The climate crisis is the greatest opportunity we have ever had to transform society and to create a better world in which we all are happy to live in. So we need to use more imagination than we have ever used to ask the question, what if? What if we got things right? What would be a world that you want to live in? What does that future look like? This is my vision board for the world that I want to live in. It's got lots of greenery on it, lots of wildflower meadows, temperate rainforests are restored. People have community gardens, so no one ever goes hungry. Bees are returning in full numbers to our wildflowers. We have gender equality so that women are in positions of leadership and power. Indigenous people have land ownership, and we learn from them about techniques like medicine so that people can be healed by nature, by going and being prescribed visits to the sea instead of visits to the hospital. We can get around cities using electrified transport and big cycle paths. And people are never very far away from a park, a space of nature, or the ocean. We have snow-capped mountains, coral reefs are thriving, and our oceans are full of fish and sharks. People are healthy, happy, and they value kindness, friendship, love, instead of money, status, and the latest iPhone. What are the barriers that are stopping us from getting to that beautiful world? Well, we tell ourselves a lot of things that can prevent action. I can't make a difference. It's too expensive. There's not enough infrastructure. It's someone else's responsibility, or no one else is doing it. I don't know what to do. It's too overwhelming. It's too late to do anything. Or, but what about China? I'm sure all of us have told ourselves one of these narratives before, but actually none of them are true. All of them have an answer, and maybe you want to discuss these and reflect on them in the next few days, because actually we can make a difference. There have been so many good news stories, and every single big change in history has started with a few small group of people caring about something and speaking up. There's so much that we can do as individuals, and I'm going to tell you that later, so you can't use that as an excuse. And actually, a new piece of research just came out that said way more people are actually making decisions based on climate change than any of us think, which is very silly because we're not acting because we don't think our neighbour is doing anything, when in fact they are. And it is not too late to do anything because every single month counts, every single fraction of a degree counts. Every single fraction of a degree that we go above 1.5 degrees is going to have profound consequences for nature and for us, which means that we need to act right now and right here. So what can we do, and what does a net zero lifestyle look like? By 2050, we all need to reach a 3-ton lifestyle in order to reach net zero. And the current UK average is at 10 tonnes of carbon dioxide a year. The current average in Cumbria is 12 tonnes. Mike Berners-Lee, in his book, There Is No Planet B, suggested that a 5-ton lifestyle is a good aim for all of us in the next few years. So what do we all have to do to get there? The first thing is shifting away from eating a lot of meat and dairy at every meal towards eating more plants. This is a graph that shows all of the global food system. So on the left here, we have all the edible crops grown by the whole world. And that is enough to feed the world's population 11 times over. And yet every year, millions of people go hungry. Why is that? Well, the grey bars at the top show the waste that we produce in our global food system. So we have waste from the harvest, waste from when it's stored, waste from transporting it. We have waste when it's sitting on the supermarket shelves, and waste in our own fridges and homes too. But this grey bar at the bottom here represents the loss when we feed edible human crops to livestock. that causes a 90% inefficiency in our global food supply chain, because you have to feed 10 times the amount of plant protein to an animal than you get out. That means that crops that are grown in Africa and Asia that could be eaten by the people there that grew them are instead being shipped to the West so that we can eat steak. So you can see that if animals eat grass instead, if it's grass-fed livestock, that is obviously not taking up edible human crops, so that is a better way of farming. However, that still takes up vast amounts of land. In fact, if all of us reduce the amount of meat we ate, we could free up an area the size of Africa to rewild and restore to nature. Not to mention that reducing the amount of meat you eat can reduce your carbon footprint by 70%, and it also helps to not contribute to the leading cause of deforestation. Travel. So this makes up 35% of our carbon footprints here in Cumbria, because we're quite a rural community and it's pretty difficult to travel anywhere. But this is a really interesting graphic, again, by Mike Berners-Lee. And it shows if you had a square metre of land and you planted that land with grass, you made the grass into petrol and you used that to power a traditional petrol vehicle, you could go 5 miles on that energy from that square metre of land. Now, if you planted that land with wheat, made bread and ate the bread and then rode a bike, you could go 24 miles on the energy. Now, if you were to take a solar panel and put the panel on the land and make electricity, use the electricity to power an EV, you could go over 1,000 miles on the energy from just a square metre of land. So this is a massive increase in efficiency caused by electrification. And this is the crazy one. So if you use that electricity to power an electric bike, you could go over 25,000 miles on the energy from just 1 square metre of land. So this is my excuse for using an electric bike to get up the hills instead of eating bread and pedaling my own bike. Consuming less stuff. We have produced 9 billion tonnes of plastic since it was created just 100 years ago. And all of that plastic is still here on Earth today in some shape or form, because it was a material that was created to last forever. So why are we only using it for a few minutes and then discarding it? We also consume so much stuff, whether it's gadgets, technology, new clothes, all of that has a massive carbon footprint and is actually 20% of most of our carbon footprints. So buying less when you do need to buy something, asking, can you get it secondhand from a charity shop, from eBay, from Vinted or Depop? And if you can't, can you buy it sustainably from an ethical small business? If you really can't do that, then when you buy something, make sure it's good quality, that it can last a long time. And if it breaks, take it to a repair cafe or try and repair it yourself. The fourth one is green your home. So 20% of your carbon footprint comes from heating your home. And there's a lot of things that we can do to try and stop that. So reducing our energy use, switching to LED lights, installing insulation, making sure that there's no drafts in your windows, you have double glazing, all of that. And then if you can, maybe thinking about installing solar panels or a heat pump to try and move your home onto renewable energy. And finally, systemic influence. So one of the most important things you can do is actually to have a conversation. But there's so much more that we can do as active citizens on the local stage and on the global stage, using our voice to join protests or marches, to write to our MP, to join local campaigns, to volunteer for community groups or charities, to donate, to invest your money in a bank that does not invest in fossil fuels. All of these things are showing governments and businesses the world that we want to live in. Taking this down to the local stage here in Cumbria, the greenhouse gas emissions report that was brought out by Mike Berners-Lee and by CAFS It's actually a really interesting breach. So this is a graph from it, and it shows the carbon footprint of residents that live in Cumbria, which is about 10 megatons of carbon dioxide a year. Now, a lot of that is, as we broke down earlier, food and drink, travel, heating our homes, and what we buy as well. So we have a huge responsibility to try and reduce the proportions of all of these activities so that we can reduce Cumbria's footprint in line with CAF's target to make Cumbria the very first net zero county. Visitors are, of course, a lot of the carbon footprint of Cumbria too, because we have so many millions of visitors every year. And something that the local community around Ullswater is doing so well is to try and reduce the carbon footprint of these visitors. So you can see the blue here is travelling to and from Cumbria, and you can see that that is the vast majority of greenhouse gas emissions from visitors. Now, about a third of that is from aviation, from people coming from overseas by plane, but a lot of it is people coming from by car from other places around the UK. So if we as local residents can try and prevent or reduce the people coming to the Lake District by car and instead make a Cumbria that is easily navigable by public transport so that people can come in their bike, on their electric bike or on the train and be able to get around and have a holiday in Cumbria without a car, that would help massively with parking and all of those other issues that come with cars as well. And that's something that Situ is doing such an amazing job of already in Cumbria. Who's been on the Hopper bus? Yes. It was an amazing experience getting a bus from Matterdale. I never thought it would happen. So congratulations to all the people who have made that happen. So my question is, what if for Ullswater? And that's a question for all of us to decide collectively. What do we want out of the Ullswater Valley? Do we want to be a beacon, an example of what can happen when a community takes action at all levels of society, from our individual behavioural choices to the way we farm, the industries that we support, the visitors that we receive, the businesses and the shops that we buy our food from, and the way we get around and generate our electricity? Here are just a few of my ideas. So the bus there, community buses, so that we can get around more sustainably, maybe car sharing schemes, so that if we have a trip to Penrith or Keswick, we can do it in one car instead of 10. Tree planting efforts. We've already had enormous tree planting here in Ullswater, thanks to Ullswater catchment management and to other groups like Another Way as well. We've planted 30,000 trees now here in the valley with amazing volunteers. And we've got farmers on board to do that as well. So there's still huge potential for increasing the tree planting around Ullswater, which is so good to prevent flooding as well. Regenerative agriculture, we have some great examples around Ullswater of farmers who are changing their practices, moving away from traditional sheep farming to introducing livestock such as belted Galloway, which are better for the soil, but through the way they graze, and reducing sheep numbers as well. So what if we could produce food sustainably that was better for the land and supported local farmers too? What if we generated our energy through wind and through community hydro projects so that we could all get cheaper, cleaner energy? And what if we all shopped at Shop Like Another Way so that we got our food zero waste without any packaging? That's just a few examples. So I'm sure you can use your amazing imaginations to come up with a lot more. And maybe that's something you want to do at your next community group meeting or whatever it is. How can Another Way help you, and what have we been up to? Well, on our website, you can find our 30 Steps to Another Way certification. This guides you through 30 tips on how you can become a more sustainable and have a net zero lifestyle. So it's full of photos, ideas, blogs, recipes. My plastic-free toothpaste recipe featured on radio today. So check that out. It's really helpful, and you can download this certification at the end. And then our major project that we've been working on is the Power of 10 app. So young people in Cumbria are so passionate about trying to make a positive difference. And I've been into 15 secondary schools around Cumbria doing research into the barriers that those young people face to taking meaningful action. Sadly, many of those young people are bullied and face peer pressure for just speaking out and for joining their eco group. They don't know how to create a campaign. They don't know the time and resources that they need to do that. They don't know how to influence their MP or how to change the whole school system. And the schools are not supporting them to do that. Teachers are so busy, it's not in the curriculum. So it's really difficult for these young people. And they are so disconnected. They have no idea that there are other eco groups in every other school around the country. And that has led to a lot of mental health issues amongst people in eco groups and young change makers feeling disillusioned. In fact, during our research, we found out that only 3% of young people within eco groups identify as an experienced change maker. And only 49% of people, less than half, had ever participated in a climate change project before. And yet they're going to an eco group every single week at school. So these are people who feel so anxious about their future, but don't have the agency to do anything about it. And that can lead to them feeling very alone and suffering from mental health problems. So the Power of 10 platform is trying to solve that through using our motto that if one person was to spread a message to 10 people in one day, and the next day those 10 people each went and told 10 more, and so on, it would only take 10 days for the whole world to have been inspired. So we're trying to show these young people that there is a massive community of people who care just as much as them. We are connecting them through the first ever digital community for young change makers, the Power of 10 app. In the community space, they can share ideas, challenges, inspiration, and start a whole array of topics on environmental issues that they care about. Whether it's sharing photos from their nature walk, or talking about myths that they want to try and challenge, or how difficult conversations with their family have been around climate. We've already had some really profound topics being started here. Then our Changemaker Toolkit is full of resources on how to take that action. So everything from home challenges to how-to guides, good case studies, and assemblies that they can give in their school or community. So we've had over 3,000 people receive an assembly or talk from one of the users of Power of 10 so far. Hundreds of trees have been planted by these young people. They've used our guides to run clothes swaps, beach cleans, litter picks, and they feel an increased sense of knowledge about climate change. They feel more able to speak to people about it. They feel heard, supported, part of a community, and less alone. And ultimately, that has led the 250 people that are already using Power of 10 to feel more motivated to take climate action. So 250 young people from Cumbria are trialling the app. They've given us loads of feedback. We've worked with them very closely. And we ran the Power of 10 Festival at Reged in February. This was the largest climate change event for young people in Cumbria's history, and it inspired so many people to go away and create campaigns for their schools and communities. We had loads of workshops helping those young people to develop their skills and find their climate superpower. And they came away so enthused, having learned a lot of skills, whether it's social or environmental. We have 15 national charities there offering opportunities to the young people. And they created these amazing vision boards. You can see one of them in our Another Way shop in Kendal. Some of the things that people have said about Power of 10, the app is invaluable. It's so nice knowing there are others who feel similarly to me. And if totally hopeful was a 10, I'm at a 7 now. It's hard to be hopeful, but societal transformation has happened in history, so it has happened again, and Power of 10 is part of the positive movements that are going on. I have learned that there are so many more people who care about the environment than I thought. I feel a lot less helpless when I know there are so many more people who care just as I do. I don't feel alone anymore. I've learned a lot. I'm so excited. I'm part of a supportive community. So we think that Power of 10 is an invaluable tool for so many young people and a real gap that has never been addressed before. We are taking Power of 10 nationally over the course of this year. And to do that, we need your help. So we are halfway, more than halfway through our Big Green Give Week. We had a £20,000 match fund from the Big Give. And over the course of this week, we have been running so many events and activities across Cumbria to try and raise that £20,000. And we have been absolutely blown away by the response so far. We are over 75% of our way to our target now, thanks to the generosity of so many people in Cumbria and across the whole world who have been donating to our campaign. We yesterday climbed the equivalent of Everest via Little Murfell 65 times, so thank you to those in this room who were doing that. I swam a long way in Ullswater on Monday and I'm still recovering from that. We've had cake sales at Cat Bells, we've had history walks, tennis tournaments. It's truly been a community effort and part of the showcase of just how amazing a place Ullswater is to be and live and be part of this incredible community. So please, if you can help us reach our target, the deadline is tomorrow at midday. The QR code is there. We can also send you the link, and there are donation buckets around. So every donation is going to be doubled so that we can have twice the impact on young people and take the Power of 10 nationally. We also have a membership program. So if you'd like to be a friend of Another Way to hear more about our wonderful work, to receive our newsletter every month full of tips on how you can take action and updates on what we've been up to, you can join our friend program. We also run some talks and a book club through that, so we can get discussing some particular environment topics every month. So please go and look at our website and read about that too. Thank you so much, everyone. Please go and follow us on social media, read our website, check out what we've been doing, and thank you for listening. Does anyone have any questions?
Well, whilst you were speaking, I was thinking of my life from the student days, and when I was a student, the book that hit the headlines was Limits to Growth. And Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, Schumacher, Small is Beautiful. This is 50 years ago. And we're still at it. The battle is still on. People have tried very hard to address these issues, and we're still at it, and we still need people like yourself and all you're doing to try to change people's mindset. It's a very, very difficult thing to do, to change your lifestyle. Very hard. But you, I know in your own personal life, you've done that, and your family's life. And I think the community here in Ullswater is very special, because I've discovered, having lived here for a while, that the issues that you touch everyone here. And there are a lot of people in this room and online who are change makers and who have succeeded against all the odds, I would say, of trying to inculcate in people a different way of living. And what you're doing here is you're moving into another scale, because in my day, internet didn't exist. You didn't have apps. You didn't have that outreach, which is incredible. You say, you know, because of this, the Big Green Give, you've been getting donations from other parts of the world.
Yeah.
And it's just mind-boggling to see how, you know, how the communication network is revolutionizing the way in which we exist. I'm going to make a challenge to you at the end, but let's first of all see if people have any questions either from the hall here or online. Michael.
I really like that slide you put up a while ago about barriers to action. One of them being something like, I don't know what to do. Like you've shown not just there are things you can do, but there are so many things you can do. There are almost too many different things you could do. What I wondered was in you personally thinking about how to take another way what you do forward, how do you prioritize the actions that you want to take? Where do you think you can make the most difference?
Let me try for the Zoomers who probably weren't able to hear all of that. Michael's saying that he was very impressed by one of the slides, which is about barriers to action and how he reflects, he's wanted to pose a question here. How do you prioritize which of those barriers to address?
So there's more than that. It's a particular one was, I don't know what to do. But Amy has shown us that there's almost too much you can do. There are so many different things you can do. How do you prioritize what you do spend your time?
Yeah, so I really like the 5 most impactful actions that I talked about earlier. So in my communications to people, I definitely used to say so many things that people could do. And you see online, 100 things you can do to help the climate. And it just does feel overwhelming. So I now focus on those 5 most impactful actions when I'm talking to people. And the University of Cambridge, the researchers there, in fact, his book is going to be a prize draw for everyone who enters the big give. So you can read it in there. But there are 5 most impactful actions that will make the biggest impact on the planet as an individual. I think the one that Another Way is focusing on most out of those 5 is the influence. Because through young people at the moment, through our Power of 10 program, we are empowering those young people to become active citizens and influencers in their community. So through them, we are scaling our impact because they're running tree planting events, litter picks, they're inspiring and educating their peers at school, they're doing all of these incredible events and raising awareness and changing their school and reducing the school's carbon footprint. And so that's kind of creating this collective impact, which has impact on all kind of areas of that river. So yes, it's influencing the young people's behaviour and lifestyle. It's also influencing their local community. But once we can show that collective impact to bodies like the Department of Education, the exam boards, and the government, we can hopefully then make systemic change as well by showing that young people are passionate, they're trying to make a difference, and we have hopefully thousands of young people in this community who can create a collective voice that's louder to hopefully influence that systemic change as well. So yes, when I'm talking to audiences like this, I will focus on the individual things we can do, those 4 biggest actions, but then Another Way we're focusing on that 5th one, the influence that we can all make. Thanks.
Other questions from the floor here or online?
Just thank you for an inspirational talk.
Thank you.
Chat.
Okay, I'm going to make a challenge.
Oh, no.
Well, we have other questions. My challenge to you is you've created a tool that can really awaken people to making a difference in their lives and also in their own communities. We haven't had that tool before. And my challenge, and it's really to the people here as well in this room, is that I think it'd be brilliant if the Ullswater Valley itself and the communities within that valley would take this on as their project. And there are enough organisations in that valley which have already demonstrated, whether it's to do with transport or water management or lifestyles like Friends of the Ullswater Way, and appreciation of landscape, of art and culture. We have people and organisations that have awoken to the possibility of a different way of living. And I'm not trying to be political. All I'm saying is we have a very special group of people in our community in the Ullswater Valley. And I think it'd be great to work hand in hand with Another Way and the school system. And, and we have politicians and so on as well. See if we can create the notion that by collective action, community-led collective action, we can actually make a tangible difference. And I think it'd be great to set up some sort of research program, bringing together the different community groups, online groups, and maybe there are other valleys in this area, in the lakes or in other countries, where that type of reflection is already more advanced maybe than here, and see whether we can engage in a community-wide program to address these issues. That's my challenge.
I think,
What do you think?
yeah, definitely. I mean, I think we're already putting Ullswater on the map as a place of transformation and a place where we're really rethinking how things could be and asking those important questions. I mean, it would be great to get one of the net zero town kind of accreditations, maybe for the whole Ullswater Valley. I can't remember there's a town in Wales that's got it, and they've worked with the university nearby to actually calculate the carbon footprint total of all the residents, the visitors, and the industries that are going on there. And they've managed to get it down to almost net zero. And I'm sure we can do that, given we've got massive tree planting efforts as well here. We could definitely be well on our way to doing that.
There's a village near Chester.
Yes, that's the one I'm thinking of.
Say again, sorry, Neil.
Ashton Hayes. Yes, we actually have a case study about it on the app. Yeah, because it is one of those inspiring case studies of all level of society actions, because they've had to address individual behaviour change, they've had to address the school, they've had to address the train station and the road that goes through the village, and the shops as well. So it's a great example of all those different stakeholders getting together.
Okay. Anyone else have any ideas on what could follow this inspirational talk?
Well, I don't really have the idea, but almost I need a message a week. I was thinking that I must resolve to walk to get my paper rather than driving up the hill to get it. But it sort of needs a message a week.
Well,
I could just
For
about.
the Zoomers, I don't know, David from the local community here is suggesting a message a week that would provoke people to do something different with the basic change making.
my the writer of my newsletter, Leela, might cry a bit if I tell her that. However, maybe we can switch to every week because we do a sustainable tip every month at the moment.
A month.
Yeah.
Oh.
And you're suggesting something really simple to do, aren't you? That anybody can do, and that it's better for the climate, but it's also probably better for you in terms of your own health. So it's kind of win-win, and that's within everybody's ability. Is just something like changing the car journey into a short walk.
And I think the inspiring thing then is seeing the collective impact of people, because if we just say, oh yeah, I didn't use X amount of plastic this week, it doesn't seem like a lot. But Helen and Nick, who have been with me from the very start of this journey, calculated the number of plastic bottles they'd saved by getting a milk delivery the other day, and it was about 10,000 or something crazy over just 5 years. And if we add that up to everyone who lives in the Ullswater Valley, then suddenly our collective impact is quite massive. And it would be really lovely to showcase that and to help us feel more motivated too and part of this wider change.
I think it's great. What David said about a message a week has made me think of a conversation I had with one of the members of the audience here, Harriet Fraser, who's a poet and fantastic individual in so many different ways. But the notion of having a poem a day or a week, or throwing up issues that people would reflect on and then try to think how in their own lives they would interpret that in their own way.
That's a good idea. Pick it up. I mean, I like the idea of the book club that you've got.
Yeah.
So I think that's needed in lots of different localities where there's a book club specifically around issues of environment and regeneration and sustainability. So it's good to see you've got that.
Yeah, there are so many amazing books out there, and we actually work with quite a lot of authors on our advisory council. So we're using all the amazing books to showcase them in our newsletter every month, and then organising talks by them as well online. So yeah, we're hoping that will grow and be popular.
Amy, I'm very impressed with it, particularly, and I don't mind doing a few reading.
Oh, perfect. That would be amazing.
On foot.
Or on your electric bike.
They're very good, everybody hasn't seen it.
Yes, I'm afraid I haven't.
It's brilliant.
Thank you.
Really well.
I'm afraid I didn't bring any, but you can download them from our website, or you can get them in the Another Way shop and pamphlets.
Let me just,
Um,
maybe, sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think Joe's put the Big Give link in the chat for everyone online as well, and maybe put our website in there as well, so everyone can take a look. Thank you.
Yes, I was just going to say before sort of closing that one of the key reasons for coming today is it's the last day for this big green give. So I really urge those people on online and those here, if they haven't already made a contribution. If you could make a contribution, it'd be wonderful, because the contribution will be doubled. This is matching grant, so but she's not far off her target. So we can. Where's the W come from?
So half of the doubling is from a foundation called Gower Street, and half is from the Reed Foundation, who found us through the Big Give. But it's a big week, so there's over 200 charities doing the Big Give. But it's such an amazing initiative, because for us, we would never have got all this support without it. So I'm really grateful we did it, even though it's been a lot of hard work.
I've got a question, all right. So
Please.
you now graduated from Exeter, and are you coming back and you're full time with Another Way?
Yeah, so there's 5 of us working on the team now, probably 7 as of next month.
And how are you going to keep up what it is that inspired you about the ocean?
Great question. That's one that I ask myself a lot. I'd really love to do a PhD at some point, but that's on hold at the moment while I grow Another Way nationally, which is no mean feat. So yeah, at the moment I'm really loving my work, and I'm enjoying making so much impact across Cumbria. So I will be here for the foreseeable, probably down in Falmouth from September, but still working on Another Way. And then hopefully when I'm in Falmouth, I can do my volunteering. So I was a marine mammal medic there. So every time there's stranded sharks or dolphins or seals, I can go and help them, and doing citizen science surveys and all of that. And then, yeah, hopefully doing a PhD looking at soundscapes on the coast of Arran.
Oh, no, that's I didn't.
Coast of Arran. So
Okay.
Arran have a whole community-led marine protected area, which actually reminds me a lot of the Ullswater community, but they entirely created that themselves. It's a no-take zone, and it's increased both fishing catches around the zone, the tourism to Arran. They've had massive scientific research going on, and the nature is just thriving. So it's really inspiring.
Great. So if anyone from this room wants to donate, there's a little basket over there, or probably better to go online as well after that,
Yeah.
because you plug into the whole system. Let me just say the final thing on the next talk. We're due to have another talk on Thursday, the 23rd of May. The speaker is Louise Lavictoire, who's the head of science at the Freshwater Biological Association. Still have to confirm details about it, but we're very much hopeful that's going to happen. So that's something to look out for. And just the last 2 words, just to offer our great thanks, I think, to you coming today after a very tiring last few days. It's the final struggle, the final obstacle to come through. Thank you so much for your energy and your inspiration. We wish you every success. And Maybe we can pick up the challenge that I was thrown down and see whether, as a collective group of different community groups in Ullswater, can we work together on a different way, another way of appreciating our communities and our work together collectively in Ullswater. Thank you very much. Thank you to those online. All the very best.
Thank you.